Giving us the opportunity to chat. I give you a little bit of background on myself. I have been with Charles Schwab for almost a year. I started back in June, and most of my background has been in advertising and marketing. I work within Schwab's Creative Center. So it's called literally the Creative Center. And we are the in-house creative ad agency or creative agency, and create a lot of communications and advertising and email campaigns. So a lot of different types of communications through lots of different types of marketing channels. And so it's a fairly large group, and I lead the account strategy team, which is basically client success or client service account management. We're client facing, and that's been my entire career, has been client management, account management, client facing roles. So a lot of the things that I'm going to talk to you about today, I will probably be talking to you through the lens of my experience as a hiring manager and somebody who's been hiring folks for a good chunk of my career. So I'll try to sprinkle in just a little bit of tidbits here and there from my own experience. I think we have about 30 slides, and then we'll be able to have some Q&A at the end. But why don't we just jump right in? All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about kind of what the candidate journey looks like from the beginning of the interest through the interview process, with a real focus on the resume writing. Talk a little bit about identifying what your skill sets are and how you might go about doing that. The structure of a good resume. Some of the things that you could do to stand out as a candidate. So giving you guys some tips and some best practices. And then we have a little bit of an interactive activity at the end. We'll give you guys a chance to take a look at a mock resume and kind of give us your take on what looks good and what doesn't. And then we can chat a little bit about questions and next steps. All right. So if you are in the process of looking for, can everybody see everything okay? Everything look all right? Just do a gut check. Can everybody hear me okay too? Just wave. Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Perfect. Excellent. So if you're a candidate, which I was last year around just before this time, and many of us have been because of so many of these extenuating circumstances today, you may have already gone through the process of starting to kind of sniff around and look at opportunities. When it comes to Schwab, obviously you want to kind of understand what's happening, or what Schwab is all about, or the company that you're interested in. So doing some kind of preliminary research. What is the company about? Checking out their social pages, joining information sessions where possible. And then once you find that company that you're interested in, do a little bit more digging, spending some time on their website, looking at their career pages, going through LinkedIn, and finding people who actually work at the company and understanding what their career paths are, or where they've worked before that led them up to Schwab. Those are some really good insights. Checking out, you kind of want to know what's going on and a little bit get a kind of a hint at the culture. And a good way of doing that is looking at Glassdoor and looking at reviews, especially at the leadership reviews on Glassdoor. And then just, like I said, just visiting some of their social pages and social profiles to see how people are engaging with it. And then you get to the, obviously, if this is something that you're interested in continuing to pursue, begin to understand what it is that you want to be able to bring to the table to talk about yourself. So that some of those engagement opportunities may be, the process of putting together your resume and researching those open positions, connecting with those people who work at Schwab, and maybe even signing up on some events, or making friends and connecting with people who work at Schwab through other social platforms. I think ultimately you really want to try to find those jobs within their career pages that seem like they would be a good fit for you. So I want to start here with the introduction to resume writing. I think of when I have looked at resumes, or when I have worked with, started the process of vetting candidates, if I'm in a position where I need to be hiring, I look at the resume as sort of a calling card. Your resume is representative of not just the things that you've done historically, but it is a representation of what you're good at and what you're passionate about, and what kinds of value you're going to be bringing to the table. It enables you to quickly communicate your qualifications and your skill set, and give a hint or give a view of your overall career journey. It's that tool that helps you organize your own thoughts about your own professional experience and your capabilities. And I don't think I can say that enough. I think in my experience, really strong resumes are those where people have kind of self-actualized what it is that they're really great at, or what their strengths are. So it is a little bit of a soul searching tool. And the way that it's organized, I think, really helps, reflects on the way that you think and the way that you can, what they can expect of you when you join the company. It also helps them understand what relevant skills you have obviously for the position that you're applying for. And one of the things that I think is really important is to be able to ask recruiters and hiring managers what they do, and how, like, people that you already talked to, ask them what they do when they're reviewing resumes. I mean, I've just told you what I look for when I'm skimming a resume. Ask others, because I think those will be really good insights. They'll give you really good hints of the way that you can kind of adjust and tweak what you put on your resume and the way that you kind of arrange it. But understand too that in many, many cases, hiring managers are looking at a ton of resumes coming through in a very short amount of time. They don't have a lot of time. So you want to make sure that you're concise, clear, and it's easily organized, that they're getting a good picture of who you are when they get a chance to take a look at that resume. So let's start with your skill set. Some of the questions you want to ask yourself are, what roles interest me? What are my skills and strengths that actually reflect or could apply to this particular role? Do I have all the education that I need? In a lot of ways, or a lot of times, having extra certifications or accreditations can really help. And so just kind of having that opportunity, or a little bit of time, giving yourself a little time to do that and to be able to acquire that, can really help. This one was really interesting, and that's, where's the role located? Is it someplace that I can actually access and get to? Can I do it remotely? Do I have the capability of doing it remotely? Those are really important questions, because your personal life is your personal life, and that always has to come first. And you've got personal obligations, so making sure that where they're located and that you can actually get there is kind of an important thing to think about. And then ultimately, does it align with my career goals? I do think that when I look at somebody's resume and I can see what their career path has been, this next role that you're thinking about, is that going to get you to the place that you want to go? I have a lot of women that I've mentored in the past who say, this is a really interesting opportunity. They're going to, could be some good, good money or some new responsibilities. And my question to them is always, is this going to further you where you want to be? Even if it's a step back, sometimes that's okay, as long as it gets you on the trajectory that you want to be. So just be thinking about those questions. I love this. I love this slide, and I want to spend a second here on this one, because this is such an important and difficult, kind of a difficult step in the process, is identifying your skill sets. You want to, when you're crafting your resume, you want to be thinking about your skill sets. What has my experience been? You want to request some feedback, and and ask people, does what I put down on my resume make sense? Is it tailored to highlight all of the necessary skills and abilities for this role that I really want to pursue. Do I have the background that is needed? Do I have the skills? Do I have the work history? And then ultimately, if this doesn't align to minimum if my background doesn't align to what's needed, can I still do that? I think one of the hardest things when you're putting your resume together is to be able to reflect and know what your strengths really are. And that can be the biggest challenge for the most seasoned people that I've worked with. And incredibly talented people, they have a hard time reflecting on what they're great at. So one thing that I do, and I like to do with people that I have mentored and that I needed to do myself, was to sit down with somebody who was a peer, a colleague, a former boss, and ask them, what did I do well? And what didn't I do well? Like, help me identify what my skills were, so that I can really highlight and be able to put some shape around and brainstorm around what I should be putting on my resume and really highlighting and focusing. So don't be shy. People love to give feedback. They love, especially when they're asked, they love to tell you what you do great. But also just, be prepared, because you want them to be very frank and you want that honest feedback on what you didn't do so great. There's nothing wrong with that. It's really good to help you be able to shore up the things that maybe you can kind of bulk up on before you start pursuing some of these new roles. So don't be shy about it. And ask those that go back and look at your former performance reviews, dig into that sort of thing, because I think that will help you kind of begin to get the juices flowing on how you can really start to tell your story on that resume in a really concise way. Let's see. So I think this is another important thing. It's, thinking about as you're going through that process, it's really important to keep in mind that it's not so much about the titles that you've had in the past, it's what you're going to bring to the table in the future. So always be thinking about it through that lens. How are you going to be bringing value to their organization? And then, are you willing and able to learn, adapt, and grow your skill sets? That's somebody who's willing to try things, to fail, and to learn and grow is a really desirable characteristic, and that's a personal characteristic. And not everybody is kind of digs that. But if you do, and you kind of get excited about challenges that make you feel a little uncomfortable, make sure that prospective employer knows that you're willing to do that. All right, we're going to get into some of the nuts and bolts here. All right. So for a resume, we'll talk about the kind of a standard format. Your format should start with your full legal name, a phone number, and an email address. The education, your most recent education, should be at the top down. I will tell you some of my personal, we can kind of get into some of the things that I personally look for as we go through some of this process, but we'll get to that in a minute. And you get to the central part, and which is the meatiest part of your resume, you want to focus on your experience. Really focus on the last 5 to 10 years of your professional experience. State the company, what were the role and multiple roles. If you've been promoted and you've had multiple titles over the course of your experience at that company, go ahead and list those. You don't have to section it out one by one. You can kind of list those roles in one line. That way it kind of takes up less space. And then school, other good things to focus on are school projects. That could be part-time or full-time work. That doesn't really have to, that's neither is better than the other. And then volunteering. There are a lot, think about other things that you've done that can help you put a spotlight on this. my son is about to graduate from high school, and he has been a leader, a technical director for his theater company. And he was thinking about, he's trying to put together his resume and starting to try to figure out what he's going to do next. And is he going to go to college? Is he going to, try to break into theater? And he's, I've had to sit down and brainstorm with him, focus on the things that you've learned as somebody who's been working as this technical director in theater. You've learned leadership skills, you've learned organizational skills, you've learned technical skills. There are so many applicable things that you've done that he never would have even thought about, just because this was his kind of school project that he was working on, or this was his extracurricular activity. Doesn't matter. You're gaining skills through all of these activities that you've done. So don't edit yourself down too much. Look for you've learned something and sharpened your toolbox of skills in everything that you've done. Even if it's, if you've been a stay-at-home mom, a lot of organizational skills, honestly, a lot of entrepreneurial skills through that as well. So you can be a little bit creative, but those are all very valid and applicable knowledge. So let's talk a little bit about the content, and then we can also talk about the order and the techniques. The objective. So typically there's an objective at the top of a resume. So under that first section, there will often be an objective to kind of give the hiring manager, a sense of what it is that you are looking for in this role. I have to say, I've seen resumes that do have them and resumes that don't. And sometimes the best resumes are the ones that the objective is stated more as kind of a reflection of their skill sets, less specific to a role. If you know the kind of role that you're looking for and you're really specific, for example, if you were wanting to find a job as a skilled nurse in a memory care facility, great. That's very specific. If you are, a developer and you want to find a job as a senior developer doing JavaScript, which I just use words that I don't understand. But if you have a very specific area of focus that you want to put in, that makes a ton of sense. If you feel like if you have a more generalized background, then focus on the skill sets that you're bringing to the table. I had this one person who had applied for a role on my team, and his objective was I want to read it to you because I thought it was pretty cool. He did not have a very specific objective, even though it was for an account strategy team member, but it said, I'm a strategic, adaptable, creative people person with a passion for great storytelling and a background working with Fortune 500 brands in digital and retail marketing, creative project management, account management, creative brief writing, and relationship management. So in that one sentence, I got a full package of good sense of the things that not only he's passionate about, but that he's good at, and that is kind of the summation of what his work history was. And there's no objective in there. Just by saying these are all the things that I've done, it's very clear to me that he's looking for something that's going to be in that realm. And so he's got a lot of adaptability and kind of skill set that we could apply in multiple ways for that particular job. So don't limit yourself to be very specific about what that position is that you're looking for. Think about that as a space that you can use for your own kind of personal branding statement. All right. Resume content. Okay, let's get to the next section. This is qualifications and skills. Education. Always focus on your highest level of education and any certifications or anything like that you've completed. Note the graduation date if you are actually in school and you're going to be graduating soon. Your skill set. So create a skill set overview of that is kind of generated from your career summary. This is not the list of things that you've done per se, but think about it collectively overall of the work that you've done, whether it's, like I said, it can be kind of think about all of the things that you've learned to do over your course of your time that might provide value in this role that you're pursuing. These are skills that could have been learned in your previous job or jobs, could have been skills that you learned in school. Again, if you were in, or if community and volunteer involvement, could be organizational skills, could be skills, working in, with certain software. It really can kind of come from anywhere. So again, don't limit yourself to thinking about it in the context of your work history. And then focus on, for your work history, this one is a little bit, can be a little bit tricky, because you definitely want to be thinking about what value you brought to the table within that job. So start with the level, with your, start chronologically and focus on the role with the company name, where it was located, the dates that you were there, what your job title or titles were, your role and responsibility, and then also, like I said, value that you brought to the table. When accomplishments, cross-functional project management or projects are great too, because it shows how flexible you are and what your capabilities are with regard to collaboration. And it also kind of shows that you've got a varied background, or have kind of been exposed to different types of things within an organization. But I would say when you're thinking about what to highlight, definitely want to put your skills and roles, your responsibilities, the things that you're responsible for within that job. But also, like I said, try to find ways to quantify it. Maybe it's, if you were answering phones, I'm making this up, if you were a receptionist in an office, maybe it's the number of phone calls you had to field every day, or clients you welcomed every day, or something like that. But try to, it really helps to kind of frame what your capabilities could be. If you were in sales. All right. And then the final impression. So kind of topping off or finishing up your resume, think about all of the things that you can highlight that you really haven't touched on before. What is your additional training that you've had? What kind of community involvement or volunteer experience that you've had? Are you really involved with your church? Are you really involved with professional organizations or business organizations? I think too, this can be a really interesting and revealing thing to think through as well, which is, what are some of your outside interests? This doesn't come up often, but it can also be kind of a nice little peek into the kind of person that is applying for a job. Maybe they are avid triathlon enthusiasts. I mean, to me, that says I'm goal-oriented and I have stick-with-itness and tenacity. Or I love travel. That to me says I'm adventurous and I am willing to embrace change and I'm flexible. Or, mountain climbing, fearlessness. You couldn't catch me on the side of the mountain to save my life. But I mean, those are if you've got some hobbies that kind of show and reveal a little bit about your character, add those. Those are also just nice to know. I mean, they definitely popped and stand out for me when I'm faced with literally 50 resumes. So don't be shy about that either. Okay, so some of the key components of a resume that we look for when we're trying to hire are, this is probably the first thing, is skimming the resume for proper spelling, grammar, and verb tense. If I even catch one, then it usually goes in the bin, and I don't even take it one step further. Is it written in a professional tone? Not a lot of slang. I've seen some that really are overly informal and almost overly cutesy in the way that it's formatted, to the extent that it seems to be trying to overcompensate. So it should be professional. It doesn't mean that it has to be dry or boring, but it should still be professional, because that does reflect on your ability to kind of present yourself formally. Have somebody review your resume and provide feedback. That will help you do the fine tuning that's needed. It'll help you kind of elevate the content. Again, remember, you want brutal feedback, because people are going to be looking at this with a critical eye. And so you want to know all of the good, the bad, and the ugly about it, to help you kind of elevate it and get it to a place that's better than it was before. And then, avoid anything that might be negative. And honestly, I don't see this happen very often. Sometimes it comes up in interviews, but you don't need to air your dirty laundry. And so if you had been unfortunately let go, maybe there was a layoff or you had performance issues, that doesn't prevent you from getting a job. But it's not something that you need to necessarily announce and trumpet from the rooftops. Those kinds of things will come up without a doubt in the interview process. And I might give you a little hint about how to handle that. I have a very close friend who was let go from her job a couple of years ago, and she was just terrified about going and having interviews with other, for a job. She's like, I don't know how to answer that. So, people get let go all the time, and it doesn't mean that you're bad at your job. It just means that job wasn't right for you. Or, if you didn't get along with your manager, it doesn't mean that you don't get along with other people. It could be that there was a change of management and they had a different vision for what the future should be and where your role could go. And you just don't match anymore. So there are ways to kind of spin the negative into something that's positive or neutral. So just kind of think through that as you kind of continue through your resume and interview process. So some things that might flag a little bit. Again, grammar, spelling. I have learned WordPerfect, 6.0 computer and spreadsheet programs. I see a couple of spelling and grammar issues and some punctuation issues. In fact, I see a little spelling issue right here. So just caught that. But anyway, so that's another reason to make sure you have somebody go through your resume. You're going to get blind to that content in your resume because you've looked at it so many times and you've created so many versions of it, and you've done it again and again and again and again to kind of sharpen it. So make sure somebody is taking a look at it for this sort of thing. And then, people are going to ask you what's your most negative characteristic, and you don't need to buy into that. Certainly don't put it on your resume. All right. So how to stand out to be a standout candidate? First and foremost, I would say research, 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 and research. Get to know the company. Look at news, kind of look at PR, look at everything that you can kind of get your hands on. We already talked about the social platforms, and spend time on their website. Look at the job descriptions, look at the skill sets that they require. Spend time on their, kind of Googling recent updates or announcements. Read the annual report or listen to kind of the quarterly announcements. Just get to know the business a little bit more, so you sound like you've got at least some knowledge. Nobody's going to expect you to be an expert, but still get familiar. And then also do as much networking as you possibly can. Connect with people. If you know somebody on the inside, great. If not, send a note to somebody on LinkedIn and just say, hey, look, I'm interested in this company. I would love to get a little bit of insight on the culture, what it's like. Not sure, but I want to know if maybe that company is right for me. Not if you're right for the company, but if the company might be right for me. So, that kind of shows that you've got that confidence and that you want that company to want you. Here are a couple of questions that you can ask that might be good icebreakers. What do you do at Schwab? Kind of help me understand your role. Here's the role that I'm thinking about. Do you have any insights on what that role might be like and what that day-to-day might be like? What's your tenure at Schwab? Tell me about the culture, things like that. So those are some really good icebreakers that I've heard come my way before. All right. Okay. And then we've already touched on a couple of these things, but resume tips to really help you stand out. Numbers. A lot of times when I have a lot of resumes to look through, numbers will be the first thing that jumps out. Whether it's results or kind of volume of work that one has managed, or it can be, the context is really up to you. But the reason that those things jump out for me says that this is somebody who's results oriented. It means that they understand that numbers matter. They understand how to measure things, whether or not that is, and they know how to tell a story and why those results matter. So it kind of has a lot of different applications. So when you're thinking about what you've done, try to put it in numbers. Try to quantify what you've done. It will surprise you. I actually had put on my resume at one point how many campaigns that one of my teams had actually run, and ad campaigns had run over the course of the year. It was over 5,000. And to think that I had 20 people who ran over 5,000 digital ad campaigns over the course of the year was stunning. I hadn't even really put, thought about that. Look, it doesn't have to be perfect. You want it to be directional. Nobody's going to go back and do the homework to try to figure out if you are precisely correct. They will give you the benefit of the doubt. Give them something directional, but at least they'll understand that you kind of are thinking about things in a data-centric way. You look at metrics, and that helps them understand how you think about results. Focus on awards and recognition. Brag, just brag. And do kind of reflect on your past work experiences, performance reviews, and leadership feedback. So I think I mentioned before, if you have access to your performance evaluations from previous jobs, spend some time on that. I think there's a lot of reflection that's needed when you're starting to put a resume together or refreshing your resume to help you understand, I really need to beef up on these areas, or I really did kind of kill it and kick ass in these other areas, and I need to be able to play that up. As far as just the kind of differentiating yourself, this is honestly, this is table stakes. Using active verbs about when describing your role and your accomplishments. They know you're responsible for these things. Here's my list of responsibilities. What they want to know is kind of using some of these action verbs that give more meaning and context for those responsibilities. Active verbs are huge. And by the way, there are many websites that you can use. Google that on active verbs for resume building, and it will inspire you to think about your responsibilities in different ways. So if you haven't done that before, do it. I think everybody who's building out resumes spends time thinking through, spend some quality time with thesauruses, but that's a great tool to help you frame up what you had been doing and what your responsibilities were. And then again, I can't, and I don't think I can state this one strongly enough. Be a brutal editor. You don't have to make a laundry list of everything you've ever done on your job. Think about the biggest things that you were responsible for, the most important things you were responsible for, or the areas where you had to have the most impact. And I like to go, and I tell my teams this, I like to focus on the rules of 3 or 5. People remember and kind of gravitate to psychologically and neurologically odd numbers. So when I am trying to prioritize, where I have a lot of information, I try to focus on what is the top 3 or 5 things that I want to communicate and get across. So to keep your resume really clean, prioritized, and easy to digest, try to focus on the most important things and think about those in groups of 3s or 5s, and try to kind of thematically group them, so that maybe you were managing client calls, but you were also managing client emails. Maybe you can kind of group that and say that you were responding to client inquiries and problem solving or something like that. So think about that kind of thematically, and try to distill the information in a way that makes it easier for the hiring manager to kind of get through it. I know that there are a lot of people talk about resumes needing to be one page. I think that that's a little bit of a personal, I think that's a little bit of a kind of a personal preference. I don't mind if I have resumes that extend beyond one page. However, if it's a resume that has a lot of gratuitous design, and that's why it seems to run over, it just says to me that they're not being respectful of my time, or they're trying to overcompensate by having lots of things, like their big picture and, you know, a lot of design frills. Like, I want to know what the meat of the resume is. If that means that you've got to go into the second page because you've got a slew of awards that you want somebody to know about, do it. But, you know, just use good judgment. Just use good judgment. Some other things that we've kind of touched a little bit on about grammar and tense and professionalism. There are some real, there's some red flags, there's some catches. So things like lead and lead. I have to admit that I think I was well into my 30s before I figured out that I messed up lead and mixed those up. So lead and lead, it's always lead, L-E-D. So you led a meeting. It's and its, there and there. Those are who's and who's, huge. So those are a few things that we see a lot, that I see a lot that get flipped around in resumes. So just be very aware of that. Be very consistent with your verb tense. So if all of your past work experiences are in a past tense, keep them all in past tense. Managed, led, created, initiated, whatever those are, just keep those all very consistent. If it's in your current job, just keep it in the present tense. Manage blah, led blah, or leading blah, whatever. And again, you just need to have somebody go through it, and somebody that you trust who can really dig in and bring their red pen and make sure that everything is spot on. Target resume to the role instead of taking one size fits all approach. This one is really interesting. I'm sure that many of you know that there are software programs that many hiring managers, many companies use to filter resumes, and they're looking for specific keywords, buzzwords, phrases. So if you are searching for a job, if you saw a job that you knew you were absolutely right for, you were really excited about on Schwab.com, and you were able to get to that job description, find specific words and phrases that match your or reflect what your skill sets are, and put those in your resume. Make the revisions and find a way to fit those phrases or words in your resume, because that software will be looking for those words and phrases, and it will ping you up, and that will help you rise to the top of resumes and candidates to be considered. So that is just a little bit of an SEO, a little bit of an SEO trick. Formatting your resume, I already kind of talked a little bit about not going over the top with design. I think there are some really good resume building tools online that kind of give you some ways to make it not quite as dry and functional, and still be a little bit creative. But the most important thing is that it's clear. Use bolds and italics it sparingly to make sure that you're emphasizing or helping to have content stand out where it needs to be. Maintain professionalism, avoiding personal information. You know, I mentioned hobbies. Again, using those in the right way can be really helpful. But things like, you know, I've got 3 kids and I've been married for 18 years and whatever. No, don't need to know that. That will come up in conversations in your interviews, possibly, or quite frankly, it's none of their business. But you know, focus on the things that help you convey what you're great at and what your strengths are. Always keep your contact information up to date. It used to be that we would have our physical addresses at the very top where you have all your name and your information. Not seeing that anymore. And that's great because quite frankly, people can work from anywhere. And that's a lot less of a prerequisite. So working remotely is a lot more acceptable these days. But that could come up that you may need to be local to that job. And that will come up when you have those conversations, usually with the either whoever is doing the initial screenings, or when you talk to the hiring manager. Make sure your email address is professional. If you have your personal email address and it's something a little, funky or fancy, great, create a different account. Do a professional email, just the fax ma'am email address. Don't fudge anything. Be honest. That it says that is what it is. And then also, you don't need to include your references on your resume. You can put on there references are available upon request. Oftentimes, though, once you kind of get to that point, they're going to be asking you for that list anyway. And I would, if you are in the market, you are already looking for a job, start having those conversations with people that you trust and that you would be offering as a reference in the first place, and start collecting that information. It can take more time than you think. It can take time to talk to that person, to make sure that they're okay with you listing them as a reference, to get their personal contact information, to put it together in a way that is presentable and easy to read and is correct. So believe it or not, that seems like such a throwaway, but it's not. It takes some time. All right. So I can take a pause here for a second and ask any questions, or we can jump right in. I don't know if anything has been popping up yet. Nothing yet?
Yeah, does anyone have any questions? Nothing really in the chat, so.
Okay, cool. All right, so this is kind of fun. We have a resume that we'll show you in just a second, and we're gonna ask everybody to review, and based on the job description that we're gonna read in just a second, wanna know what your thoughts are with regard to the way that this resume came together. Want to know your opinions. This is you using your own judgment. Is this candidate skill set easy to identify? Did they highlight the right skills that are transferable that would help to strengthen their candidacy? Is it organized? Is it clean? Easy to follow? Is it concise? And then what did they kind of drop the meat on? What did they do great? All right. So we are going to take a look at this job description. This is a fake job description for a job at Schwab for a client banking services professional. The opportunity, I'll just read this out loud. Our client banking service professionals are at the forefront of the client experience, delivering outstanding service to the clients of Charles Schwab Bank. You will serve as the subject matter expert on the following banking products and services: deposits accounts, online management and bill pay, money movement, mobile banking, and debit cards. Also, you'll provide technical assistance and problem resolution to clients. You are good at providing outstanding client service with a one-call resolution, handling approximately 40 to 60 calls per day, while demonstrating empathy and problem-solving skills. You will practice active listening and open-ended dialogue to gain a thorough understanding of the client's needs. You'll be collaborative, working on a team of 10 to 15 professionals. You will resolve client issues using different technology and tapping in business experts to identify the issues and find ways to fix it. And then what the kind of skill sets that you have, the ability to establish rapport with clients over the phone and to build long-term relationships with them. You have a desire to work in a collaborative team environment, have a high level of attention to detail, and understand the importance of the policies, procedures, and guidelines and are able to follow them. You have been working for at least a year, could be volunteer, could be unpaid, could be internships, anything. We haven't talked about internships, make sure you put those on your resume as well. And you have a desire for training that includes self-training, instructor-led training, and on-the-job learning. You have a drive to learn from your manager to focus on performance objectives, and you have aspirations for a clearly defined career progression. So that's the job. Now let's look at John Smith's resume. Can you all see it okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to just leave this. I don't know if I may have to scroll through, but I'm going to leave this up here for a second and let everybody take a look at it, and then we'll chat. Let's see. Okay, we'll give it one more minute for you to go through his content. All right. Okay. So I'm going to ask for volunteers. Amanda, do you want to facilitate some volunteers to give us their thoughts on this resume?
Yeah, does anyone want to unmute? Oh, perfect.
Okay, I noticed on the tax preparation assistant, that was a old job, but they didn't put it in past tense when they said answer. They didn't say answered or researched or confirmed or prepared.
There's also a large gap between tax preparation assistant and sales associate. No, never mind. I read it wrong. Sorry.
Okay, one thing I'd like to add is that he has been out of the requirements that they're looking for since 2018. Because
Right.
even though he has a lot of experience with doing phone calls and negotiating resolutions, he hasn't done it since he only did it for like a month. He did it for, well, a year, correction. Okay. But he's been out of the industry since August of 2019. So what is he doing now? He's working with residents. He is implementing rules and regulations, but it's not so much in pertaining to the job skill they're looking for. He may have some skills, but they probably need a little brushing up.
I think all of those are really good points. Do you think it's absolutely necessary for him to have those kind of have been working in that industry closer to the time that he's actually trying to get the job?
Yes, that's very important. And then when I'm sorry.
No, Go for it.
I look at the fact that he's going to school for Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, and how is that going to play a role into Charles Schwab's future? He's trying to get a psychology major. Okay. So how does that play a part into what they're looking for? I mean, is he going to stay there long enough to just get his education and then he's going to be gone? Is he going to be a short termer? Because if we look at his work history, he's only been at the campus bookstore for 1 year. Got it. He don't have a long work history into a particular location. And yeah, that's what I got out of it.
Well, and
Those are
also like on the last job experience, I mean, he's got 4 bullet points up there. I would minimize that, and so that the others stood out more, you know, because that's where his skills was the previous 2, like Miss Mary said. And that last one, he didn't need to elaborate on all those things because they were irrelevant to the position. And his spelling errors.
Anybody else? Those are all really, really good points. Really good points.
Just from a visual standpoint, the address obviously isn't probably needed. His phone number and just the email address, you know, are probably the most appropriate, as you pointed out before.
Yeah. Anybody from the Schwab team have thoughts or on the or comments on it? Okay.
I got one more thing, and maybe it's just because I'm older. It's too small.
That may be my screen, but I'm kind of with you.
Yeah.
I have to lean in. Oh, well, I would say, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. It's just something small. A lot of people have hit on it. I would, one, design-wise, I would just align, if possible, the time stamps all align right. It just makes it look cleaner, a little more elegant. 2, I would, anything that's like Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Access, unless it's a differential, like a program that is abnormal, I would just say the Microsoft Suite. That's just kind of all encompassing.
That's a good point. And I really like that you mentioned that in the formatting. Just having, I tend to try to do the right, left, justify. So just keeping it center justified to kind of create that symmetry. I completely agree. All those are really good points. Janina, are you about to say something?
Yes, I think, the resume is actually like, I think what it lacks, he actually has the skills in technology and he has his, he has provided his education, but I think he should be like putting like like a summary of, what, like a summary, like after his name, like why he wanted to apply for this job, what is his goal to apply for this job, kind of like just a little summary on that top, so that that would actually like pop up to the hiring manager, like, okay, this probably has like, he probably has like some, gaps in there with his experiences, but if he can actually provide a little bit of details on why he wanted to apply for this job, I believe, he might, this person might have a chance to be able to get an interview with the hiring manager.
Yeah, he doesn't sell himself.
Yes, like to market yourself. Yes, right. That's correct. That's a good point.
I mean, there's so many opportunities. If you go back to the job description here, there's so many opportunities that he has to be able to pull some of this language out and be able to replace it here, because he definitely has customer service, client relationships, some of the background service background to be able to kind of match what the ask is. Completely agree. I think if I were to get this resume, I would be a little bit confused. Typically, I will say, I know that this approach has the education at the top. Typically, I see education at the bottom, and kind of the second to the last thing to sign off. So I think, again, it's personal, kind of personal preference. But when I see that this is for a client success or client service opportunity, but it's leading with my education for and I'm getting my degree, he's getting his degree in psychology. Now, I can see some loose connective tissues between psychology and client service or client success. But again, I'm not exactly sure if this is going to be this person's like temporary job, or if they are going to be going somewhere else and their trajectory is completely different. And when you get hired and you're getting onboarded, especially in a company that is like Charles Schwab, that is so highly regulated, it takes a lot of time to figure out who the right person is, and lots of background checks and lots of training and lots of onboarding. And it can take months and months. I mean, I've been there for a year and I still don't know what the heck I'm doing half the time. Just saying, I'm still learning the business, and they don't expect you to understand the business right off the get-go. So it takes a lot of time and investment. And so they want somebody who's going to be committed. So like somebody had that was such a great call out. Like, I'm not sure if I'm connecting the dots here. The skills and technology all seem to be pretty relevant. Agreed. I think this person has jumped around a little bit, but maybe they're very young. I'm not judging on that. I think people who are younger and have had a few year-long jobs, it's not great, but it's not terrible. This is the beginning of their career, so that's okay. If this was somebody who was 10 or 12 years into their career, but had jumped around, 1 to 2 years almost consistently, that would be a red flag. That would be kind of concerning. The fact that they did tax preparation, I'm a little less concerned about the fact that was a couple of years ago, because to me that shows that they understood the subject matter, and they were able to get in there, and they did it for about a year, and they were able to kind of get that necessary background and work history and experience, that it may not be a direct translation to the job, but at least I have a little bit more of I have some confidence that is something that they may be capable of.
Sorry to interrupt, Lauren, we're actually at time.
Oh gosh.
But this exercise was so helpful. I mean, being able to look at a resume and be able to see all the different points that are so important to look out for, and again, reinforces how having multiple people look at a resume is such an important piece of the process. So thank you.